all about lines. So we're working out lengths, gradients, midpoints, and so on. So let's get into it. In the diagram below, we've got point A, point B, and point C, and they are the vertices. They're the corners of this triangle. Line AD is drawn such that D is the midpoint. Okay, so this D here is the midpoint of that line. Okay, which we can see because we've got the two equal sides. So they show us this side is equal to that side. Okay, so we know this is then the middle of that line. If we have a look at this question, let's see what they ask us here. Okay, so I'm just going to do it like that so we can see the whole triangle. So first of all, they say determine the gradient of BC. Okay, so gradient, it's a formula that you have to know. So I've got the formula here, and we would just adapt it. So it doesn't matter if you put B first or you put C first, you've just got to follow that, whichever order you follow. I'll show you what I mean now. So let's work out the gradient of BC. So we have to, first of all, let's just get our points. So B, they tell us is the point -8, 2. C is the point 4, 6. Okay, just to make sure we're all on the same page, remember, if you have points like this is always, it's always in the form X and then Y. Okay, so you got your X point first and then your Y point. That's really important that you don't mix those two up. Okay, so if we want the gradient of this BC, let's go back to this one. Okay, let's just fill this in a bit. So gradient, we are going to say, whichever order you want, so YB minus YC divided by, this is where, I mean, the order is important. So if you did B first, you have to do B first again. Okay, we are just going to plug these values in then. So YB is the Y value of B, which is this 2. YC is this 6. It's the Y value of the C. Okay, so we're looking at Y values first. So take away 6. At the bottom, we want XB. So XB is this -8. XC is 4. So we just put it in like this. Let's simplify at the top. So 2 minus 6 is -4. At the bottom, -8 minus 4 is -12. Okay, then we've got a fraction that we can simplify. So a minus divided by a minus means actually we've just got a positive. And we can divide top and bottom by 4. So let's get a different color just so we can keep track of what we're doing here. So if we divide top and bottom by 4, so that's just simplifying, what we end up is 4 divided by 4 is just 1, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. And so that is our gradient in the end. Okay, so our gradient of that line BC is 1/3. Okay, we could fill it in here. So the gradient of this line, let's just say M is another word that they use for another representation for gradient. So we could say the gradient there is 1/3. Let's see what they want next. So next we have calculate the length of BC. Okay, so we're using these same points again. Again, you have to know this formula. Okay, so we need to know this length formula. Let's just get our points down so we've got them somewhere close by. Okay, so we know B is this point -8, 2. C is the point 4, 6. And we want the length of it. So we have to know this formula. That's pretty much, because it's not too difficult to work it out once you have the formula. That's why they give you the marks for the formula. So if we want the length for this one, let's just set it up with B's and C's. So we're going to say, again, it doesn't matter which order you do it in. So XB minus XC squared plus YB minus YC squared. Let's plug in these values. Okay, so the X value of B is -8. X value of C is 4. We square that. And then the Y value of B is 2. The the y value of c is 6. And we square that. So you have a calculator, so you can just plug it straight in. I don't have a scientific calculator right now, so I'm just going to simplify it a bit more. So this first one, minus 8 minus 4, so that's minus 12. And then, okay, let's do it properly. Minus 12 squared. 2 minus 6 is minus 4 squared. So we are going to end up with the square root. So minus 12 squared. A minus squared is just positive. So 12 squared is 144. 4 squared, remember positive, that becomes a positive, so 16. So let's work out then. 144 plus 16 is 160. So we actually want the square root of 160. And at that point then you would plug that into your calculator to get this length. Okay, so square root of 160 is 12.65. We don't know if it's centimeters, so just put units there. Okay, next question, they want to know, determine the value k. Okay, determine the value of k. Okay, if we want to determine the value of k, so if we look at this k is one of the terms in the midpoint. So we're going to need to use the midpoint theorem for this one. The midpoint theorem, again, we have to know this one, this formula. How we work it out is we need 2 points. And again, it's these same points, these b and c all the time. So we need 2 points and we could find what is the middle of these 2 points. So let's just plug these points in again. I'm not going to rewrite them because we know them by now, but let's just rewrite this midpoint theorem. So the midpoint, what we are going to do here is we're going to know xb plus xc divided by 2. That will give us the first value, which actually it should give us this minus 2 that we have already got. And then the second one, yb plus yc divided by 2. Let's plug this straight in. So xb, so the x value of b is minus 8. X value of c was 4 divided by 2. The y value of b was 2. The y value of c is 6 divided by 2. Okay, and so we get the midpoint if we work this out, which is the same as point D because they told us that's the midpoint. So minus 8 plus 4 is minus 4. So minus 4 divided by 2 is minus 2. So that is, we know we've done that right because we've gotten that same minus 2 that we should have had. The second one, 2 plus 6 is 8. And then 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay, which makes sense. If you look at this, it has to be a positive y value. And if I were to draw up here, let's just get a different color. If I was to draw up here, that is about a height of 4. Okay, so we could say that is about 4y. So that is what we have worked out there. We've worked out that that is 4. Okay, and then let's see, I think one more question. So, is AD parallel to BC? Okay, so let's just have a look at this. So they want to know, in bright green, let's do that, is AD parallel to BC? So they want to know, is this line here parallel to that line there? Okay, what you need to do, if they start asking you if lines are parallel, one good trick that they often use is for lines to be parallel, their gradients have to the product of the gradients have to equal minus 1. So if we work out the gradient, so I'm using this M word again. So gradient of line AD, and we work out the gradient of line BC, and we times them by each other, we should get an answer of minus 1. Okay, so if this happens, then we know, sorry, they're not parallel, then AD will be perpendicular to BC. Okay, so that's the trick there. I'm going to make a note just somewhere so you have it, because sometimes they ask you another thing. So sometimes, if lines are parallel, then the gradient is exactly the same. So sometimes they ask you to check that instead. Okay, so that's what you always need to know. So if you want perpendicular, so this case we've got perpendicular lines, then we've got to check, can we multiply them and then get -1 as our answer? Otherwise, we want the gradients to be the same if they're parallel. Okay, so we already worked out the gradient of BC. So we said the gradient of BC, we worked it out to be 1/3. Let's quickly work out the gradient of AD. Okay, so we've got A is -3, 7. D, we just worked out, is -2, 4. So we want the gradient. So remember, again, we have to know this formula then. It just shows you how important these formulas are. So gradient is always the change in y, so the difference between the y values, divided by the difference between the x values. Make sure if A is first, it's first top and bottom. Okay, let's work this out. So A, the y value is 7. D, the y value is 4. Then -3 is the x value, and -2 is the y value. So we're going to get at the top, 7 minus 4 is just 3. At the bottom, -3, a minus and a minus is going to make a plus. Okay, -3 plus 2 is -1. And so we end up with 3 divided by -1, which is just -3. Okay, so now what we can do is we can say, well, we've got the gradient of BC. This is the gradient of BC. We've got the gradient of AD. So the gradient of AD is -3. So now we can check if they are perpendicular. So remember, to check if they're perpendicular, we just times them by each other and we see if we get -1 as our answer. Okay, so let's check. Oh, I just want to change the color. Okay, so let's check MAD times MBC. So MAD is -3, MBC is 1/3. If you times them by each other, we do get -1 as our answer. So because we get -1 as our answer, that means, therefore, line AD is perpendicular, so it's at a right angle to BC. Okay, that's all we need to do in this question. What they could then say is, what is this angle here? So we know then that that angle there is 90 degrees. Let's get a different color. Okay, we've just worked out that angle there is 90 degrees and that angle on that side is also 90 degrees. So that could be a follow-up question. Okay, so both of those, because we've proved those lines perpendicular, we know that both of these angles are 90 degrees. Okay, I really hope that video helped. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and good luck with your studying.